Chapter 1. The Cry That Broke the Force. There was no father. There was no spark of union, no breath of love beneath moonlight, no prayer spoken between hands, only silence. And in that silence, a tremor in the scorched womb of Tatooine, the Force, shuddered. Not in light, not in darkness, but in something older, something broken. A woman named Shmi lay upon a straw mat, beneath twin suns that never slept. Her breath staggered, her skin blistered, her hands trembled with something she could not name. The midwives were gone. The owners did not care, and yet the child came, with no bloodline, no name, no permission from the laws of nature. He came, through pain, through heat, through some unseen gate in the Force, and when he entered the world, his first cry was not the wail of new life. It was the scream that broke the balance. The wind outside died. Moisture vaporators shut down without reason. Far beyond the desert, animals collapsed in fear. And in the Jedi Temple, Master Yoda's meditation fractured like glass. Something had entered. Shmi held him close, though her soul trembled. He was not warm, not yet. His skin felt like stone soaked in breath. But he looked at her, and in his eyes she saw the galaxy dying, becoming, falling. "I will call you Anakin," she whispered. But the name had already spoken itself. He did not smile, he did not blink, but the Force bent slightly around him, as if reality itself leaned closer. There are myths of Sith alchemists birthing monsters, of Jedi temples hiding virginses in the womb of planets. But no myth prepared for this. For this boy, he grew quickly, not in size, but in pattern. Things he should not know, he knew. By age 3, he could dismantle a protocol droid blindfolded. By 4, he spoke of dreams he did not live. By 5, he built machines from scrap that should not have worked. But did Anne always? He felt things before they happened. Rain that would never fall. Storms in space. Sand that moved without wind. "I hear the Force," he told his mother once. "What does it say?" "It's lonely." She held him tighter. That night, in Mos Espa, they called him strange. In the alleys, other slaves avoided his touch. Watto, the Toydarian merchant who claimed to own him, often said the boy gave him headaches. Tusken Raiders once raided the outskirts of the quarter, but when they neared Anakin, they turned back. One of their shamans would later say in Sanskrit, "We smelled something dead inside him, but it was still breathing." And then came the Jedi Qui-Gon Jinn, a man who listened not to counsel, but to current. He saw the boy, tested his blood, over 20,000 midichlorians, more than Yoda. The Jedi were not ready for him. But the Force had made its decision without asking. Shmi stood by the doorframe as her son prepared to leave. "Will I ever see you again?" she asked. He looked at her, quiet, and something ancient passed across his face, the knowing of sorrow far too early. "I'll come back," he said. But the Force is a path of departure, not return. The ship rose from Tatooine's crust. The sky swallowed it, and below, the boy's first home, his only anchor, became no more than heat-rippled sand. In the void of space, Anakin sat by a viewport. Obi-Wan watched him from a distance. The boy's hand touched the glass, as if searching for something that had already slipped away. Qui-Gon watched them both. "He is the chosen one," he said, certain. But certainty is often the last breath, before revelation drowns it. Elsewhere, Sidious smiled. In the black hollows of the Sith sanctums, ancient spirits stirred. In tombs lost to stars, old holocrons glowed. Somewhere in the deep, a presence, not alive, not dead, whispered, "It begins again." The Jedi thought they had found a child of balance. But balance is not peace. Balance is the tightrope over chaos. And this child was not a savior. He was a mirror, a fracture, a storm given form. I saw it then, though I am no longer of flesh, though I speak now only from crystal, memory, and shadow. I saw the scream that broke the force. I watched it take shape, and I whispered across time. The boy is not hope. He is the wound the force forgot to close. Sleep now, seeker. There is more to tell, but this was the beginning, the first breath, the first tear, the cry that echoed into prophecy and death. Chapter. To those who feed the flame, the temple welcomed him with silence, not the silence of peace, but the silence of judgment. Tall towers crowned by sky, polished floors that whispered beneath soft footsteps. A place of supposed light, yet within its walls, the force did not sing. It waited. Obi-Wan Kenobi escorted the boy with the stiffness of duty. He did not smile. He did not trust. Anakin Skywalker entered the temple not as one of them, but as a question none of them wanted to ask. The council gathered eyes like distant stars, voices aged by centuries. Their robes barely moved, yet power echoed in the stillness. Mace Windu looked down at the child. "Too old," he said. Yoda narrowed his eyes. "Much fear in him, I sense." But Qui-Gon stood firm. "He is the chosen one, born of the Force itself." He believed it, truly, desperately. He believed in prophecy more than in protocol. And so the boy was tested. Questions he did not understand. Images he had never seen. Shapes, emotions, thoughts. He answered before they finished asking. "He sees the future," Obi-Wan whispered, unsettled. But not all futures are his. Anakin did not understand why their faces grew darker the more he succeeded. He did not know that power without permission is called danger, and yet they allowed him to stay, not because they were sure, but because they were afraid of being wrong. They placed him among the younglings. He sat cross-legged in circles of children half his age. He smiled. They did not. When Yoda taught meditation, Anakin struggled. When they reached into the Force, he dove into it. Too fast, too deep. He was not touching light. He was swallowing it. He dreamed in screams. He saw his mother crying, her back bent beneath chains. He saw stars collapsing into flame. He saw the temple, this very temple in ruins. The masters told him dreams pass in time, but his did not. They grew each night, the Force wrapped tighter around him, like vines with thorns. It whispered of things to come. He did not tell them. Instead, he trained. His movements with a blade were not graceful. They were inevitable. He did not learn, he remembered, as if combat were etched into him before birth. Obi-Wan watched him. He did not speak of his doubts. He only corrected him with more discipline, more control, more rules. But control is poison to those born in fire, in secret. Anakin disassembled his training saber and rebuilt it from memory. He changed the emitter crystal, tuned the blade's pitch. It no longer hummed like the others. It roared quiet, but wild beneath the surface. He once told a classmate, "I feel like I'd been here before. Not here, but somewhere like it." When the other asked what he meant, Anakin simply blinked. "Sometimes I remember things that haven't happened yet." The child said nothing more. But from that day forward, he sat far from Anakin in the council chamber. Yoda met with Windu again. Too much fire, the old master murmured. Windu nodded. He listens, but only barely. His loyalty is to people, not the code. Dangerous, that is. They considered delaying his knighthood. They considered sending him back to Tatooine. But Qui-Gon stood as his shield. He was sent to us. He insisted, if we do not guide him, the galaxy will burn. And then Qui-Gon fell, Naboo, a red-bladed demon. A death to Swift. Obi-Wan survived, barely, and in his dying breath, Qui-Gon made him promise, train him. He is the chosen one. And so, against instinct, against training, against the very council's decree, Obi-Wan took the boy as Padawan, a flame given to a man still covered in ashdot. In time, they traveled the stars, fought pirates, fought injustice, fought fear. Anakin called him master, but he still dreamed of his mother, still woke with tears he would not show, still heard voices in engines and circuits, still saw the temple burning, and in the dark corridors of Coruscant, another voice began to follow him, a whisper in politics, a kindness offered, a presence in shadow. Chancellor Palpatine. He invited Anakin to speak, to sit, to feel seen. You are not like the others, he said, and Anakin, for the first time, felt understood. The Jedi taught obedience, Palpatine taught confidence. The Jedi warned against attachment. Palpatine praised loyalty. The Jedi feared the flame. Palpatine fed it, and far beneath the surface of the world, in a chamber older than the Senate itself, a black crystal began to glow, an old Sith. Holocron, sealed for centuries, pulsed for the first time in 1,000 years. Its voice whispered, "He is near." The Force did not weep. It did not scream. It simply shifted, and no one noticed. No one, except the dark. Sleep now, Seeker. This tale has many layers, and you must not awaken too soon. The boy has stepped into the current, and the current leads only to storm. Chapter 3 The Vision Eaters at first. The visions came like ripples, small, flickering distortions in the water of thought, a flicker of a planet burning, a cry echoing from far away. His mother's voice, not alive, not dead, caught between seconds. Anakin did not speak of it. To speak of visions was to invite scrutiny, and scrutiny, in the temple, was the first step to exile. He told himself they were dreams, but dreams do not draw blood, and these left him waking with fists clenched and sheets torn. In meditation, he saw her, Shmi, bent and bleeding bound, in a place without sky. Her mouth moved, but no sound came. Her hands reached for him, always too far. When he told Obi-Wan, his master only nodded. Dreams pass in time, but this was no dream. Each day the visions fed upon him. His appetite faded, his sleep became shorter, his patience thinner. He began sketching symbols he didn't recognize. Spirals, broken circles, jagged script that curled like Sith glyphs. He etched them into metal scraps. He dreamed them into his repairs. He whispered them in fever. When the war began, the visions changed. Now they came during battle. He would lift his saber and time would freeze. He would see his enemy fall before the strike had come. He would hear words spoken minutes before they left mouths. He would feel death before it happened, but never in time to stop it. A gift, the council called it. A gift they feared. Yoda began observing him from shadowed corners. Plo Koon asked him indirect questions. Even Obi-Wan hesitated now, measuring every command, every response. But Anakin's eyes were elsewhere. The visions grew hungrier. They no longer waited for sleep. They came during silence. They came during conversation. Sometimes he would stare at Padman and see her funeral. Other times he would look into his own hands and see them soaked in blood. Her blood. He began to sweat during peace, to tremble in quiet, to walk with his hand always near his saber. He did not know if the visions were warnings or instructions. The Force was not speaking, it was screaming. But there were other voices too, quieter, older, uninvited. They came to him through metal, through shattered battle droids, through the hum of destroyed starships. He began hearing a second voice beneath the Force's song. Low, mocking, endless. It did not lie, it did not tell him what to do. It simply showed him what could be. You will watch her die, it whispered. And you will be helpless. You will be the cause, and they will call it destiny. You were never meant to save, only to destroy. Anakin clenched his fists. He broke consoles. He silenced the noise with fire. But it always returned. Sometimes, in his dreams, he saw a throne, not made of gold, but bone, ancient, fossilized, wrapped in the robes of the forgotten. A black crown waited at its top, and a voice said, "You already sit here. You simply do not know it yet." The Jedi taught detachment, but the visions punished him for feeling nothing. When he tried to let go, they grew louder. When he grieved, they softened. When he wept, they waited. When he raged, they fed. He began meditating differently. He stopped closing his eyes. He drew the Force into his body like a storm into a hollow mountain, not to find calm, but to hold it back with power. And one night, alone on a warship above Jabium, he fell into a trance he did not intend, and he saw himself, older, armored, faceless, slaughtering Jedi without hesitation, standing beside Sid, watching twin suns rise above a planet of ash. He tried to wake. He could not. The vision pulled him deeper. He saw children hiding in temple corridors, his own hand, his saber, striking them down. He felt himself scream. But only silence came. And then, in the center of that silence, he saw Padma, her throat bruised, her eyes wet with betrayal. She whispered, "You were supposed to save me." When he finally awoke, his body was soaked with sweat. His saber had ignited in his sleep. The walls bore scorches, and his hand, the same hand that struck her in the vision, had bled against. The hilt he did not tell Obi-Wan. He did not record the dream. He simply stared out at the stars and whispered, "I won't let it happen." But far beneath Coruscant, in a sanctum lined with secrets and incense, Darth Sidious meditated too. He had seen the same vision. He had given it, not through Sith sorcery, not through trickery, but by opening a door that had already begun to crack. Anak's mind was not being invaded, it was being harvested, and the visions, these futures, these terrors, were not warnings, they were bait. The dark does not predict. It offers. The Force does not lie. But neither does it protect. Anakin had tasted the vision. He had swallowed it like poison disguised as prophecy, and now it would grow in him like a seed, like a hunger, like a crown he had not yet placed upon his head. Chapter 4: The War That Worships Him When War Began. The galaxy sighed, not in horror, but in relief. At last, a reason to kill without guilt, a reason to summon armies and unleash them as prayers to order. And in the heart of this storm, the Jedi stood like statues, cracking under lightning. They became generals. They became judges. They became the very thing they once vowed to resist. was not saddened, he was ready. War did not frighten him. It welcomed him. The Republic gave him a ship, a title, a legion of soldiers who called him General Skywalker with reverence. But they did not follow him out of duty. They followed him because the Force moved differently around him. Where other Jedi fought with grace, Anakin fought with inevitability. Where others sought peace, he sought victory. He did not hesitate. And the war, like a hungry beast, recognized him. He won battles no one else could, pushed back armies 3 times his number, laughed in the face of odds the council feared to speak aloud. But with every victory, the war whispered, "We are the same, you and I." And he began to believe it. The clones adored him. They would disobey orders for him. They would die for him without command. To them, he was not a Jedi. He was something greater. To Padmé, he was a hero. To Obi-Wan, a concern. To Palpatine, a masterpiece. He and Obi-Wan led campaign after campaign, brothers in arms, bound by survival. But cracks grew between them. Anakin wanted decisive ends. Obi-Wan wanted negotiated ones. Anakin struck without warning. Obi-Wan waited, argued, delayed. And with each delay, Anakin watched soldiers die, watched Pam's face grow more distant, watched the council send him further from the heart of the Order. "They do not trust me," he said one night on a scorched world of glass. Obi-Wan said nothing, because it was true. The council watched him with reverence and dread. He was their weapon and their mistake. Yoda meditated on the edge of battlefields and spoke of imbalance. But his voice was lost beneath the engines of war. The Force. Once a chorus had become a siren. Anakin learned to pilot by instinct. He danced through fleets like a shadow. He leaped into enemy fire and emerged unburned. Not because he was lucky, because he belonged to the fire, and the fire knew its own. He no longer questioned his power. He began to believe it was always meant to be this way. The Jedi preached humility, but the galaxy begged for deliverance, and he was that deliverance. Palpatine told him so, again and again. "You are the best of them," he said, with a smile. "Like poison in silk, they hold you back because they fear what you might become. They call it balance, but they want control. You could end this war tomorrow, if they would only let you." And in secret, Anakin began to wonder, what if they were wrong? What if the prophecy was not about peace? What if balance could only come through dominance? He did not speak it aloud. Not yet, but the seed had already cracked open. On Jabium, he ordered an orbital strike that vaporized a city. It ended the campaign in a day. 3,000 died. He was given a medal. On Felucia, he destroyed a command post without confirmation of surrender. He was reprimanded by the council and awarded honors by the Senate. The soldiers called him the Flame. The separatists feared his name more than his blade. They told stories of his eyes glowing red in the dark, of his ship arriving without warning, of his silhouette walking through fire, untouched, unhurried. And sometimes the stories were true. The war did not change him. It revealed him. Ahsoka walked beside him now, learning not just to fight, but to feel. He taught her disobedience. He taught her courage. He taught her how to lead without permission. And when she doubted the council, he did not stop her, because he doubted them too. She was a mirror, and he loved her, not as a daughter, not as a sister, as a piece of himself that had not yet shattered. But war consumes, and reflections do not last long in flame. The Force no longer brought clarity, it brought noise. The future no longer warned, it tempted. He began to see himself on thrones, with Padman beside him, with peace enforced by strength, not darkness. Order. He did not hear the voice behind these visions, but it heard him deep beneath. Coruscant, Sidious listened to the tremble in the Force. He knew the moment was near. Anakin was no longer dreaming of what might be. He was wanting it, and want is the beginning of fall. The Jedi could not feel it, because they were blind in light, because they trusted prophecy, not instinct. They did not see that the war no longer served them, they served it, and the war served him. The prophecy said one would bring balance, but prophecy never said how, or whether balance would come before the galaxy screamed, "Sleep now, listener, for the galaxy turns, and the spiral deepens, and soon the mirror will shatter." Chapter 5. The ghost of the living Padawan. She did not die, but she was not the same. Ahsoka Tano returned from exile with her eyes lowered and her silence louder than any cry. Once she had danced through battle with fire in her voice. Now she walked as if wrapped in mourning cloth, alive but unreachable. Had searched for her, fought for her, begged the council to undo its blindness. And in the end, she chose to walk away, not because she stopped believing in the Jedi, but because she had seen what they truly were. She returned, but only in body. She did not wear the braid. She did not kneel in the temple. She did not call him master, and yet Anakin felt her everywhere, a shadow behind him on the battlefield, a whisper in the hangar, a silence that judged without speaking. He smiled when he saw her, but the smile did not reach his soul. He asked nothing of her, because what could he ask? He had taught her to think for herself, and she had done so. He had taught her to doubt authority, and she had doubted him. She had left, and it had broken something in him, something fragile, something human. When she returned, she brought with her a wound that did not bleed, a fracture between master and apprentice, between teacher and mirror, and still he loved her. But now it was the love of a ghost for the living. He could not stop her. He could not save her, and she could not follow him down the path already beneath his feet. The council welcomed her coolly. Some smiled, some nodded, but none apologized. Not truly. Their arrogance had cost them a soul, and the galaxy would pay that price in fire. She spoke to Anakin only once of what she had seen outside the temple. "They think they are serving peace," she said, "but peace is not truth. It's just a quiet lie." He nodded, because he had begun to feel the same. The war had shown him many things, none more clearly than this. The Jedi had not lost their way. They had burned it behind them. They spoke of compassion, but feared attachment. They praised sacrifice, but punished grief. They taught serenity, but rewarded numbness and Ahsoka. She had learned this lesson before him. When she looked at him now, she saw a storm behind his eyes. She saw the prophecy creeping up his spine. She saw power unmoored from obedience. She saw what he might become, and still she said nothing, because she still loved him. Because some ghosts cannot be exorcised, they must be carried. He asked her to return to the Order. She shook her head. They want soldiers, not Jedi. He asked her to fight beside him. She did, for one last campaign. Mandalore. There, the old ways were stripped bare. There, the Jedi hunted Maul, once a Sith, now a prophet of vengeance. There, Ahsoka fought as she once did. There, Anakin was sent away. The Force pulled them apart like tides tearing ships from harbor. He felt it. She felt it. It was not strategy. It was design, for in her absence, the fracture widened. And in that silence, Palpatine moved. He summoned Anakin, spoke of the Council's fear, spoke of the secrets they kept. He whispered of Darth Plagueis, of unnatural powers, of life and death. Anakin did not flinch. He only listened, because the ghost of his Padawan had returned, and still he felt alone. Because Padma no longer understood his silence. Because Obi-Wan watched him like a flame watches a fuse. Because even the Force had turned cold, the clone. Wars neared their end. Victory was assured. But Anakin did not rejoice. He feared what came after. He feared peace. For what was peace if it took Ahsoka from him? If it brought visions of Padme dying in childbirth? If it meant the Council would turn their eyes upon him fully, not as a hero, but as a threat? He walked the temple corridors alone. He sat in chambers that once echoed with teaching, now emptied by war, and he heard her footsteps only in memory. He had taught her to leave, and now she was gone, not dead, worse, alive, and forever out of reach. The ghost of the living Padawan walked behind him, and she would walk behind him, forever, even as he stepped into the dark, even as the crown lowered upon his soul, even as the temple crumbled in fire, and she looked back, and saw only smoke. Sleep now, listener, for the next silence will be blood, and the next betrayal will be holy. Chapter 6. The Temple Beneath. The temple, they called it a sanctuary, they called it sacred, they called it light, but beneath the temple, buried in Kyber and silence, lay a structure older than the Republic, older than the Jedi, older than memory. It had no name, only echoes, only silence that watched. Anakin stood there once, in a forgotten chamber. The holocrons pulsed like hearts sealed in glass, and the walls, they hate you, MMED. Not with the light, not with the dark, but with something deeper, the root of the Force, before it split into creed. He was not supposed to be there. The chamber was sealed, guarded by rites, kept from initiates, Padawans, even knights. But the Force had called to him, and when he touched the door, it opened. Inside were relics not meant for Jedi hands, masks from forgotten wars, scrolls of prophecy burned halfway through, a statue of a figure cloaked in thorns' eyes, weeping ash, and at the center, a mirror, cracked, black. Still, he saw himself, but not the man he was, the man he would become, a figure in black. Breath of fire, eyes like molten stars, hands of death. He stumbled backward. The mirror whispered, "You are not the chosen. You are the fulfillment." He told no one, not Yoda, not Obi-Wan, not Padme, especially not Ahsoka. The vision haunted him, yet beckoned. He returned again and again, each time stepping deeper into the dark beneath the light. He began to read the forbidden scrolls. They spoke of virginces, of cosmic wounds in the Force, of beings not born but summoned, of the chosen one, not as savior but as circuit, a design by the Force to reset itself through fire and death. They spoke of balance, not as peace, but as extinction of the excess. He began to question, what if he was never meant to preserve the Jedi? What if he was meant to end them? What if balance required a blade, not a sermon? In these depths, he began to feel it, the echo of something older than Sidious, older than the Sith, older even than the Force as he knew it. A will, a hunger, a cycle. He was its fulcrum, and he was not alone. For Palpatine, too, had walked these halls, long before his mask, long before his throne. And what he found, he fed. It was here that the temple itself had turned blind. Here that the Jedi built their citadel atop a well of silence, believing their height would drown the depth. But the dark does not sleep beneath the light it waits in now. It stirred. Anakin no longer found peace in meditation. He found truth in fire. No longer dreamed of justice, only freedom. Freedom from the chains of codes, councils, and creeds. He did not tell Padma. He kissed her forehead and whispered of children and tomorrow. But in his chest, a different child stirred. One born of prophecy, one born of clarity. He did not tell Obi-Wan, for Obi-Wan would speak of fear, and Anakin was done fearing. He was not lost, he was becoming. The council gave him no answers, only doubt, only delay. They placed him on their circle without trust, gave him a seat without a voice, and Palpatine watched it all, like a god tending a furnace. He knew the temple beneath the temple. He had walked its spiral. He had heard its silence. And now he fed it one final offering. Anakin, sleep, listener. For this night the Force twists. Its roots rise in the dark. And soon the blade will fall upon the temple. Chapter 7. The betrayal crowned as loyalty. The Jedi spoke of vigilance. They preached distrust of emotion. But in the end, it was their trust that doomed them. They trusted the Republic. They trusted their own codes. They trusted Anakin Skywalker. Even as they watched him drift like ash from the flame, Palpatine called him to chambers, laced with secrecy, gold and crimson drapery, too heavy with history, statues of ancient tyrants staring down from the walls. Some Jedi, some not. The Chancellor's voice was warm, his eyes colder than space. You are not like them, he said. They do not see you. I do, Anakin bowed, but his heart did not. In Palpatine's words, he found music. In the Jedi's silence, he heard accusation. They had raised him, taught him to wield the Force, but never to understand himself, only to suppress, only to sever. And what is a bond, when it is only allowed to breathe in secret? He was told not to love Pad, told to let go of Ahsoka, told that attachment was weakness, yet every vision, every dream told him this. Love was the only thing real, and it was slipping from his fingers. He saw Padman die in childbirth. Over and over, he felt her breath choke in his sleep, felt her fingers grow cold beside him in dreams. And always, his hands were stained. He pleaded with the council, teach me how to save her. Yoda looked away. Obi-Wan said nothing. Windu narrowed his eyes. They saw danger in his plea, not grief, not fear, only power they could not control. But Palpatine offered hope. He spoke of the dark side, not as evil, but as natural, a deeper current beneath the visible stream. He told a tale of Darth Plagueis the Wise, a Sith who could shape the midichlorians, prevent death, create life. Anakin's breath stilled. Could it be true? Could the answer to his torment lie not in denial, but in embrace? He did not answer aloud, but the crack had widened. A root reached for the wound. The council summoned him again. They tasked him to watch the Chancellor, spy, report, betray. Even now, they did not trust him with truth, only with usefulness. Anakin obeyed. But something in him recoiled. He was asked to betray the only man who had never withheld power from him, the only one who called him equal, the only one who saw the shadow in his heart and did not flinch. He told himself this was duty, but duty had begun to stink of rot. He found himself pacing the Jedi archives, sleepless, breathing shallow. A voice whispered from the cracks in the floor, "You are not the servant of peace. You are the storm they feared." Palpatine revealed himself. Then, not in fear, but in confidence. Yes, he was the Sith Lord. Yes, he had played the war like an instrument. And yes, he could teach Anakin what the Jedi refused. Anakin should have drawn his blade, should have ended it. But he hesitated, because the Jedi had lied, and Palpatine had not. He went to Windu, told him everything, a last cry for help, a test with the Jedi now act with wisdom. They did not. Windu, left with warriors, told Anakin to remain behind. Still not trusted, still outside. The betrayal was sealed not by blade, but by exclusion. Anakin waited, paced, burned, until he could take no more. He raced to the tower, and there, at the height of the storm, saw Windu, poised to strike a kneeling Chancellor, an execution, no trial, no code, just fear, just hypocrisy. Cried out, he must stand trial, but Windu would not yield. In that moment, Anakin saw the truth. The Jedi were not peacekeepers, they were tyrants in fading robes. And Palpatine was survival. He raised his saber, one choice, one blow, and the Republic ended, not with fire, but with loyalty. He knelt, and in that kneeling he did not fall. He rose. Darth Vader was not a name of chains, it was a name of clarity, of purpose, of protection, so he told himself. For Padme, for peace, for the child not yet born, the betrayal was complete. Crowned in oaths, sworn in silence, forged in love, the temple would burn. But first, the sky must go dark. Sleep, listener, sleep while the stars still flicker, for the sabers have not yet been drawn, but the hand is already upon them. Chapter 8. Ash in the Garden of Light. Once, it was a place of whispers and stillness, of young voices echoing through halls of stone, of morning bells and robes brushing ancient floors. The Jedi Temple, heart of Coruscant's peace, crown of the Republic's promise now. It would become a tomb. The sky was black that night, though no storm touched it, only the silence before a scream. The 501st marched in perfect rhythm, shadows beneath golden towers, clones, once brothers of the Jedi, now veiled in the mask of duty, and at their front, Anakin Skywalker, but the name no longer fit him. He walked not in grief, nor rage, nor guilt. He walked in stillness, as if following a voice only he could hear. The temple doors opened before him. Without resistance, children ran to greet him, young, wide-eyed, trusting. "Master Skywalker," one asked, "there are too many of them. What are we going to do?" His saber answered. The blade rose. The garden became a furnace. Lights clashed in sacred halls. Statues crumbled. Holocrons shattered. The archives burned. The knowledge of 1,000 years. Snuffed in a moment, Jedi Masters fell without words. Knights fought with tears in their eyes, and the Padawans, they ran. But nowhere was safe, for the darkness was not at the gates. It wore a Jedi's face. He moved like a storm, his saber a wound in the Force itself. He did not speak, did not tremble, only cut. Even the droids paused at his silence. The clone troopers hesitated at times, some remembering comrades, training partners, but orders were orders, and Vader gave them without remorse. There was no turning back. He had not chosen this lightly. He believed he was saving them, that this purge was mercy, that the Jedi had grown so blind, so brittle, they must be broken to let the galaxy breathe again. He saw it as surgery, necessary, precise, ruthless. But the Force saw something else, a wailing, a shattering, a child, still clinging to visions of death, still begging the future not to come, still seeing Padme scream in his sleep, and believing that slaughter was love. Outside, the temple spire caught flame. It burned like a beacon across Coruscant, and none could say what it meant. The Senate was silent. The people dared not ask. Palpatine declared the Jedi traitors, that they had plotted to take control, that they had turned against the Republic, that the Empire had risen to restore order. The galaxy applauded. Order, security, peace. They did not see. The children burning in the garden did not see the saber fall upon the innocent, did not see the chosen one become the destroyer. Obi-Wan felt it across systems. A wound in the Force, a scream that did not end. He turned his head toward the stars, and the silence told him everything. Yoda trembled where he stood, not in fear, but in mourning. 1,000 voices extinguished, an entire temple turned to shadow, and the heart of it all was love, twisted, contorted. Weaponized. Anakin Skywalker did not die that night, but the boy from Tatooine who built padraises and dreamed of freeing slaves. He never returned. In his place stood a mask not yet forged, a breath not yet mechanical, but a soul already sealed. Ash covered the stone floors. The Jedi's garden, once filled with light and laughter, was now a graveyard, and in the silence, the Force wept. But it did not end. Not yet, for one last thing remained. Padme, sleep now. Listener, the garden is silent, but the roots still burn beneath the soil, and soon they will bloom in blood. Chapter 9. The Birth of Empire, the Death of Love. The Senate chamber rang with silence. Thousands of eyes watched the figure in black robes ascend. His voice was no longer gentle, no longer cloaked in feigned wisdom. It was raw, like iron being forged in fire. The attempt on my life, he spoke, has left me scarred and deformed. But his eyes gleamed like knives. He declared the Jedi a traitorous order, that their extinction was justice, that their philosophy was a sickness, that peace required purification. And so, beneath domed arches of cold stone, amid thunderous applause, the Republic was buried, and from its ashes an empire rose. Order was its name, security its banner, and none questioned the cost. All clapped, all bowed. Only a few, a dying few, whispered of what was lost. And beneath that echo, far from the Senate's glow, Palm Amidala sat in stillness, watching her world unravel. She knew, though no words had been spoken, she knew it was Anakin. He was not dead, but he was no longer alive. She remembered his hands, the ones that trembled when he held her, the ones that built droids out of scrap, the ones that cupped her stomach when they whispered of the child to come. Those hands now held a saber, soaked in blood, and yet she still loved him, not the mask, not the title, but the boy who once said, "I will come back for you." Obi-Wan came in secret, his eyes hollow, his breath shallow. He spoke the words no one dared utter. He killed the younglings. Padme shook her head. "No, you're wrong. You're lying." He would never, but the words fell apart in her mouth, because she knew. The child stirred inside her, not in fear, but in sorrow. The Force moved differently now, as if the galaxy itself had inhaled poison. Obi-Wan begged her. "Where is he?" She said nothing. She flew alone to Mustafar, a world of fire and seething veins. There, in the Inferno's breath, he waited, draped in black, eyes glowing faintly yellow, but still her husband, still Anakin. He smiled when he saw her, like nothing had changed. He spoke of power, of peace, of a galaxy he would rebuild for her, for their child. He said the Jedi had betrayed him, that together they could end the war, that love had made him stronger. Padme stepped back. Tears blurred the vision of his face. He did not notice. He spoke of the Empire as destiny, of the Sith as liberators. She whispered the words like a wound. "Anakin, you're breaking my heart." And behind her, a shadow moved. Obi-Wan emerged from her ship. Anakin's breath stopped, his hand clenched, and something cracked. "You brought him here to kill me." There, in the lava-lit valley, love died. It did not shatter in a single blow. It bled. Anakin turned on her, not with a blade, but with fear. He choked her without thought. His fingers curled with fury. Her body crumpled at his feet. And even then she reached for him, Anakin. But he had vanished. Only Vader remained. Only rage. Only betrayal. Obi-Wan ignited his saber, and the valley answered in thunder. But that tale waits in shadow. Now there is only breath. Shallow, broken, fading Padme was carried to Polis Massa, far from the fire, far from the screams. But the wound had already taken root. She gave birth with trembling hands. Luke, Leia, and then silence. They said she had lost the will to live, but it was not will she lacked. It was hope. The Jedi were gone. The Republic was gone. Anakin was gone. And yet, 2 stars were born that day. Tiny lights against the dark. The Empire did not see them. Not yet, but the Force did. And it remembered. Sleep now, listener, for the mask is forging. The lungs are wheezing. The scream is almost ready, and the war has only just begun. Chapter 10. The Mask and the Machine. The flames of Mustafar roared like the screams of forgotten gods. Molten rivers spat fire against the black sky, and ash fell like snow upon ruin. He had been left there, not by fate, not by war, but by the hand of a brother. Obi-Wan's saber had not struck to kill, only to stop, only to warn, but even mercy, when forged in fire, becomes damnation. Anakin Skywalker lay beneath the fury, his limbs severed, his breath a gurgle, his eyes wide with agony and betrayal, and above him no one came, not the Jedi, not Padme, not the Force, only the Emperor. He arrived as a shadow wrapped in command, no grief in his steps, no horror in his eyes, only satisfaction. The dark side did not mourn the fallen, it reclaimed them. Droid surgeons bore Anakin away, piece by scorched piece, onto the obsidian table, and there the ritual began, not of healing, but of binding. The flesh was gone, the man broken. What remained was fear, anger, regret, obedience. They grafted iron to nerve, plastic to bone, glass to vision. His breath was no longer his own. It came in mechanical rhythm, harsh and eternal. And then came the final seal, the mask, lowered not as mercy but as tombstone. It clicked into place. A hiss, a pause, and then that sound, the breath of the void, the breath of Darth Vader. When he rose from the table, the galaxy shuddered. Not because of what he looked like, but because of what had been lost. The boy was gone, the dreamer, the savior, the chosen one, buried beneath black armor. Vader took his first steps, as if learning to walk again, heavy, cold. Final, Palpatine watched, with the pride of a puppeteer. "Can you hear me?" he asked. The answer came not in words, but in pain. He asked after Padme. The Emperor's lie was soft and cruel. In your anger, you killed her. And so the scream came. A scream not of sorrow, but of chains tightening. A scream that shattered circuits, crushed instruments, broke the air. The dark side welcomed it. For in that scream, Vader died again, not as Anakin, but as hope. Now he would be Palpatine's blade, his shadow, his will. The Empire was no longer an idea, it was a body, and Darth Vader was its breath. He was sent to purge what little remained, to hunt the Jedi across forgotten worlds, to crush dissidents with silent fury, to extinguish temples and archives, and cast light into eternal exile. Children spoke of him in whispers, a monster in black, a ghost who walked the stars, a shadow that hunted with no face. But he remembered everything, the temple, the twins, her voice. He buried it deeper with every order obeyed, and yet, sometimes, alone in his fortress, the mask off, the machines hissing in the dark, he would reach out, not to kill, not to rule, but to remember. The sound of her laughter, the desert wind, the hum of a small boy staring at the stars. But memory, in the hands of the Sith, is a knife, and so he sharpened it, again and again. He became the war. The rebellion would rise soon, seeds sown in secrecy. But for now, he was the end of breath, the death of dawn. Sleep now, listener, the mask is sealed, the machine is complete, and the prophecy is lost in shadow, but not forever, for light is patient. Chapter 11. The Hunters of the Hidden Flame. After the temple fell, after the younglings burned, after the Jedi Order was ground to dust and scattered in the wind, some still lived. They did not fight. They fled, not from cowardice, but from purpose. For the Force whispered to them not of triumph, but of survival. They became shadows, ghosts hiding in caves, sewers, and moons with no names. Some buried their sabers in sand. Others carried them like sins. They whispered old prayers to no one. They taught the Force to children in secret. But the Empire saw. The Empire watched, and it built something new. Not armies, not fleets, but inquisitors. They were once Jedi, twisted, broken, fed poison through pain and fear. They were not Sith. They were less, but more than human. They carried red blades, not built, but bled, tortured into crimson, and at their head walked the shadow. Darth Vader. The Emperor gave him a mission: cleanse the galaxy of the Jedi's remains. He obeyed with method, with cruelty, with silence. The Inquisitors hunted in packs. They smelled the Force. They followed rumors. They dragged knights from hiding and executed them without name. One Jedi was found on Corellia, hiding in a forge, working with fire. They burned him alive in his own kill. Another on Raxus Prime, disguised as a droid mechanic. They crushed his limbs before beheading him. Some took their lives before capture. Others begged the Force for escape. But the Force had grown cold. One Inquisitor, the third sister, told tales of Vader's silence, that he would watch the hunts, say nothing, and kill those who showed mercy. Even the Inquisitors feared him, not just for his power, but because he remembered their names. He had trained beside them, ate with them, called them brothers. Now he ended them one by one. Some tried to reach him. "Arnie, it's me, don't you remember?" And for a moment, perhaps a flicker, his saber would pause, but then it fell. The chosen one, the redeemer, the hero, ... became the executioner. And yet, not all flames were found. Some Jedi vanished deeper, into ancient catacombs, into forgotten temples sealed before the Clone Wars, into planets that no longer existed on charts. And in these places, they did not pray for rescue. They waited for a child, for a sign, for the prophecy to rise again. The Inquisitors called them cowards, but the Force whispered otherwise. It whispered of balance, not vengeance, of one who would awaken the sky still. For now, they bled, and as they bled, the Empire grew stronger. Its banners were raised on Coruscant and Dura and Chandrila. Stormtroopers replaced clones. Fear replaced trust. Silence replaced song. But Vader heard the whispers of a rebel spark, of stolen codes, of Jedi children hidden in plain sight. He crushed cells in the Outer Rim. He tore secrets from smugglers and senators alike. But something eluded him, not in space, not in fire, but in the Force itself. It was moving, not toward him, but around him, as if preparing for a wound yet to come, as if the very current of destiny had begun to shift. And still he hunted. For the Emperor commanded it, and pain was the only tether he had left. Sleep now, listener. The Jedi are dying, but they are not yet dead. The flame is hidden, but the wind begins to turn. Chapter 12. Twins beneath the scattered stars, when the cradle of Padam, Amidala, turned cold, when her heart ceased and her voice fell into memory, two infants were carried away like embers from a dying fire, not to be kings, not to be warriors, but to be hidden, for the Sith were watching. The galaxy was no longer safe, and so two destinies were torn apart before they ever had a chance to intertwine. The girl, Leia, strong of will, bright of spirit, she was taken to Alderaan, to the house of Organa, where royalty was not worn as a crown, but as a responsibility. There, under painted skies and marble halls, she grew not as a secret, but as a symbol. To her, Bail Organa spoke softly of peace, and in whispers of the Republic. He did not tell her whose blood ran through her, only that she was hope. She learned politics before poetry, courage before comfort, and even as a child, she stood in rooms where men shouted and silenced them with a glance. The boy Luke, he was taken to the edge of nowhere, to Tatooine, to sand and sun and silence. There he lived, not as prince or heir, but as farm boy. Obi-Wan watched from afar. He called himself Ben now, a name worn like old robes, a disguise for guilt. He lived in exile, not from others, but from himself. He never spoke to the boy, not truly, only watched, only protected, only waited. And Luke, he knew nothing of stars, nothing of sabers, only moisture harvests, broken droids, and dreams far too large for a desert sky. But the Force watched them both. Leia, walking with fire beneath her breath. Luke, staring at twin suns as if they were questions waiting to be answered. They were separated by system and silence, but their spirits sang the same song, one of restlessness, of yearning, of unfinished fate. The Emperor did not know, not yet. He believed the bloodline ended with Padme's final breath. He did not feel them, not while they were small, but Vader felt something, not clearly, not consciously, but sometimes in dreams. Haunted by sand and stars, he would awaken to a name he no longer remembered, and his machine heart would quicken. Luke. Leia, the Force whispered these names to itself, not loudly, not in prophecy, but in hope. Yoda, hidden in the swamps of Dagobah, heard it too, in the bubbling of the bog, in the rustling of vines. There is another. Time passed in silence. In breath and hiding, the children grew, apart, but aligned, and all around them. The Empire tightened its grip. The last of the Jedi were dying. The Inquisitors were thinning, and Vader's shadow stretched across 1,000 worlds. But balance, even buried, does not sleep forever. The Force does not forget its songs, and destiny, though delayed, is never denied. Sleep now, listener. The stars are stirring. The flame is flickering. Soon they will meet, and when they do, the shadow will tremble. Chapter 13. The spark and the saber beneath the twin suns of Tatooine. The wind whispered ancient names, names the boy did not yet know. Luke Skywalker, he bore it like dust, unnoticed, ordinary, forgotten. He spoke of joining the academy, but he did not know which war called him. He dreamed of ships and stars, but not of sabers, not yet until the droids came, until they arrived, not by prophecy, but by coincidence, wrapped in fate. R2-D2, carrying within his circuits the last breath of Alderaan's hope. Leia, bound in chains, sending her cry through the void. Help me, Obi-Wan Kenobi, you're my only hope. And so the flame rekindled. Ben Kenobi, hermit of sand and silence, stepped forth once more. Old eyes, older guilt, he told the boy fragments. Of his father, a Jedi Knight, of a weapon elegant, ancient dot of a war. Lost dot, and then he offered it. The saber, not just a blade, but a memory carved into light. Anakin's saber, passed not as inheritance, but as atonement. Luke held it, and the Force stirred. Not fully, not awake, but aware. The Empire had sensed the movement. Stormtroopers came. Owen and Beru burned. Luke stared into the ashes, and something within him broke, not with rage, not with power, but with purpose. He chose exile, not inward but forward. He left the desert behind, joined the smugglers, the rebels, the outlaws. The spark had ignited across the stars. Leia's path twisted in parallel. She endured torture. She faced the void of Alderaan. Her home turned to dust by command of the Death. Star by Vader's word, she did not flinch. She hardened, and in Luke, in his innocence and his ache, she saw something missing. Not weakness, but light. Together, they fled. Together, they fought. And with every breath, the Force wove their paths tighter. Yet they did not know what bound them. Not blood, not prophecy. Only instinct, only rhythm. The rebellion grew. Vader hunted its leaders. He interrogated prisoners. Not for maps or codes, but for names. One name now whispered in the ranks. Skywalker. He heard it, and like thunder behind a mountain, something ancient stirred in his mind. Skywalker, a name buried, a name once spoken with pride, then burned away in fire and ash. Could it be? Could a son have lived? He ordered pursuit. He searched the stars for the boy who bore his saber. But still, Luke was only a spark, untested, afraid, unaware, and the Force watched like a tide drawn back before the great wave. Sleep now, listener. The blade has found its hand, but the hand does not yet know how to wield it. Soon, the past and future shall meet in the storm, and only one will rise from its center. Chapter 14. The cave that whispers the self beyond the edge of maps. Beyond stars that remember their own birth, there is a swamp that breathes. Dagobah, not planet, but wound, not sanctuary, but threshold. Here the force thickens like fog, neither light nor dark, but presence. Obi-Wan's voice, long past, guided Luke to this place, not in flesh, in echo, and there, deep in vines and silence, waited the last master, Yoda. No longer the general, no longer the teacher of temples and councils, now an exile draped in moss and riddles. He spoke not with authority, but with questions. Luke was impatient. He wanted action, answers, power. Yoda gave him none, only training. That broke the body and puzzled the mind. Lift the stone. Feel, do not think. Control your fear, or be devoured by it. And when the boy's restlessness grew, the master pointed to the cave. It yawned beneath the roots of a dying tree, wet, cold, watching what's in there. Luke asked, Yoda's single quotes, eyes narrowed, only what you take with you. He entered, no light guided him, no voices, only breath, and a sense of being watched from within his own blood. And then the shadow came. Darth Vader, not imagined, not summoned, but manifest. Luke ignited his saber. Struck without hesitation, the blade met the form. The mask fell away, and inside the mask his own face, not Vader's, his. It was not a vision. It was a warning. The path of the Father lives. In the sun, he fled the cave. But he did not leave alone. The image stayed, etched behind his eyes. Luke was afraid of what might come, afraid of what already was. But Yoda said no more. The time for riddles had passed. The Empire would not wait. Rebellion was cornered. A trap had been laid, and Vader he no longer merely suspected. He knew the boy who carried his blade was his son, not rumor, not ghost, truth. He felt it in the Force, like a heartbeat. He'd forgotten was his, and so he prepared not to destroy the boy, but to claim him, not as prey, as heir. The throne of fire now stood empty between two stars, and both sides, Jedi and Sith, reached for the same soul. Luke was not ready, but he would go, not out of arrogance, not for glory, but for love. His friends were in danger, Han, the ones who'd stood with him when he was nothing. And so the boy left Dagobah, saber in hand, training incomplete. He left the old master in the swamp, the cave behind, the prophecy unfinished, and the Force held its breath. Sleep now, listener. The cave has shown its vision, but the path has not yet chosen its end. Ahead lies betrayal, and revelation, and blood. Chapter 15. Father, fallen Bespin. A city above the clouds, drifting like a memory unmoored. It was there the trap was set, not by stormtroopers, not by generals, but by a father, long dead to his name. Vader, he did not seek to kill the boy. He sought to shape him, as fire shapes steel, as shadow shapes light. Luke arrived in haste, too early, too unready. He did not know how to face a ghost that wore his own future like armor. But he came, not to fight, to save. Leia had been captured, Han frozen in silence, and Lando, a man of half-truths and velvet lies, betrayed them all, then tried to make it right. It was too late. The duel began, not with rage, but with ritual. Vader silent, Luke determined, but the Force did not roar. It whispered, the sabers clashed, but the true battle was beneath the skin. In Vader, something flickered. Not pity, not mercy, but recognition. The boy moved like him, struck like him, hesitated like he once did. Luke was brave, but incomplete. Vader was whole, but hollow. The battle wound through metal and mist, deeper into the chamber of endings. And when the moment came, Vader struck. Luke screamed, not in pain, in loss, for his hand was gone, the saber, his father's saber, lost to the void. And then, truth, I am your father. No thunder followed. No stars fell. Just silence. It shattered him, all his teachings, all the fragments Obi-Wan fed him, all the half-light he was raised in, burned to Ashdod his father. Not a noble knight, not a legend, but this, a mask, a monster, a murderer. The Force offered no comfort, only stillness. Vader did not strike again. He extended a hand. Join me, together. We can end this lie. Together we can rule. Luke looked down, the abyss beneath. The path ahead he chose neither. He fell by his own will, by his own refusal. Better the void than the throne of ashes. He did not die. He was caught by Leia, by fate, by the Force, perhaps, but something in him broke. Not the body, the faith. He asked the question in a whisper. Ben, why didn't you tell me? And in Dagobah, Yoda closed his eyes. The secret was no longer hidden. There is another, Leia, his twin. His mirror, the bloodline had not ended. It had multiplied, and the Force, ever ancient, ever patient, shifted once more. The Father had spoken, but the Son had not answered. Not yet. Sleep now, seeker. The mask has cracked. The hand is gone. The truth bleeds beneath armor, but the war for the soul is far from over. Chapter 16. The Temple of Shadows and Echoes. There are places in the galaxy where time forgets itself, where stone remembers and silence listens. Ender's moon, rich with life and innocence, held more than trees. It cast a long shadow, and at the center of that shadow the Emperor waited. But before thrones rise, let us turn to what lies beneath. Vader returned to his master, but something within him stirred. Not rebellion, not regret, conflict. Palpatine saw it, felt it. The same fracture he once exploited in Anakin was now a crack in the mask of Vader. You are troubled, the Emperor hissed. A weakness I must burn from you. Vader bowed, but not as low as before. Elsewhere, Luke returned to Dagobah. The swamp knew his steps. The trees wept differently. This time, Yoda was dying. His light flickered gently, not torn away in battle, but released, like breath returning to the Force. Before he vanished, he said what Ben would not. Yes, Vader is your father. And then, another name, Leia, the other Skywalker. The circle widened, and as Yoda became mist, a weight fell upon Luke. The last Jedi, not yet. Not while his father breathed. Not while the Emperor ruled. He built a new saber, green, calm, purposeful, a symbol not of vengeance, but of choice. The rebellion gathered its strength. Leia commanded with fire. Han returned, scarred but loyal. Lando led ships through stars once locked, and Luke turned inward. He saw not a war, but a wound. He felt it inside Vader, a tremble, a silence, a call, and so he surrendered. he walked willingly into the arms of the enemy. They brought him before Vader, father and son, alone in metal halls between stars. "I know there is good in you," Luke said. "I've felt it." But the man in the armor replied with silence, only the sound of breath, of machinery, and beneath it, doubt. Vader's grip tightened, not on his saber, but on his certainty. He spoke of duty, of destiny, but not of conviction. Luke had touched something, not the Sith, not the Jedi, the man, Anakin, Palpatine, waited atop the tower. The Death Star pulsed with power. The throne room, darkness on every wall. He welcomed the boy with venomous calm, told him his friends would die. That hope was rebellion's illusion, that he would strike down the Sith only by becoming one. And as the fleet clashed in orbit, as Ender burned beneath walkers and fire, Palpatine urged Luke to take the saber, to kill in rage, to fulfill the circle, and Luke wavered. The Emperor showed him his friend's pain, the trap they could not escape, and Vader, silent beside the throne, watched his son tremble, until Luke struck saber met saber, father against son, flesh against fate, and deep within that temple of power and shadow, something began to break. Not walls, not empires, but the chain, the old chain, forged in Mustafar, sealed on the Death Star. And in the clash, the echo of another voice was heard. The name beneath the mask, not yet answered, but no longer silent. "Sleep, listener, the saber is raised. The throne watches. The end has entered the room." Chapter 17. The mask falls twice. Throne room was a wound in the skin of the galaxy. Black stone, cold fire, the seat of an emperor who named himself the Force's mouth. Palpatine, he watched as father and son tore the air. Between them, with light and wrath, Luke's blade sang with fear, Vader's with sorrow. Each blow echoed across bloodlines, across legacies. Neither fought for victory, they fought to be seen. "You are unwise to lower your defenses," Vader warned, but Luke heard something else, not threat plea. He tried to turn away, to choose mercy, and the Emperor smiled, not at Luke's compassion, but at the storm rising in his veins. He struck again. Vader blocked. Barely. The boy had grown stronger, faster, but still incomplete, until Leia Palpatine whispered her name, dug the dagger in. "If you will not turn to the dark side, perhaps she will." Something snapped. Luke roared, and the Jedi within him drowned beneath the tide. His saber flashed like lightning. He drove Vader back, step by step, until the Dark Lord fell to one knee, until Luke stood above him, blade raised, ready to end it. But then he saw the wires, the stump, the severed hand. His own hand trembled. He looked down, saw himself. The mask was not Vader's alone, it could become his. And in that breathless instant, Luke dropped the saber. "No," he said. "I am a Jedi, like my father before me." The silence that followed was not peace, it was judgment. Palpatine rose, disappointed, amused, infuriated. "So be it, Jedi." Lightning tore from his fingers, raw. Shrieking agony, it struck Luke like a storm from the abyss. He screamed, fell, burned, his bones lit from within. "Father, please," he cried. But the figure in black stood still, motionless. The mask watched. The Emperor laughed, another surge of pain. Luke, code said, pleaded, double quotes, help me. And then the mask turned, slowly, toward the throne, toward the old master, toward the choice. The breath was ragged, the will buried. But not dead, Anakin rose. Not Vader, Anakin not. With anger, with sorrow, with love, he took the Emperor in his arms. The lightning poured into him, tearing through circuits, flesh, memory, and he cast Sidious into the void, screaming, dying, ending. But the fire burned. Anakin too, he fell. Luke crawled to him, held him. The mask hissed, flickered Anakin's voice, faint, as a dying star rose from behind it. Let me look on you, with my own eyes. Luke removed the helmet. No monster, no myth, just a man, scarred, pale, tired, but human. I was once a Jedi, Anakin whispered. You were right. Tell your sister. You were right. His eyes closed, and the mask fell a second time. This time, forever, Luke wept, but not in despair. In release, he carried the body, not as a trophy, as a son outside. The station crumbled. The fleet triumphed. Leia felt him in the Force, a twin reborn in grief, and far beyond the stars. The Force stirred for balance. Had begun sleep, dreamer. The fire has passed, but there is one more echo, one final breath. Chapter 18, The Chosen One. The mask was gone. The breath had stopped, but the Force did not silence. It sang, not loudly, not with triumph, but as a lullaby, older than time. Luke laid his father's body upon a pyre, not as Vader, not as a Sith, but as a Jedi. Not for what he had done, but for what he had undone. The flames touched the armor. It did not scream. It did not resist. It vanished as the hate once did. Ashes to air, armor to light, and in that moment the war ended, not with a battle, but with a release. Above Endor, the Death Star shattered. Its fragments rained like fading stars. Below, the Ewoks sang. The rebels danced, but Luke stood apart, watching the fire, listening for something that no celebration could give. Leia approached. She did not speak. She only stood beside him, the twin. Flame beside the pyre. She understood, through blood, through bond, through the Force. He told her, not with words, but with memory, and she grieved, not for the Sith Lord, but for the brother she never knew, and the father they had both lost. Far away, in realms without distance, where the Force dreams, Anakin stood again, whole, younger than the mask, older than his sins. Beside him, two figures, OBI-1, silent, watching, Yoda, small, smiling. The three became light, not as ghosts. As echoes returned, balance had come, not in conquest, but in compassion. The Chosen One was never a warrior. He was a wound. He bled across generations, across temples and sand, across stars and slaughter, until his son offered healing. That was the prophecy, not that Anakin would destroy the Sith, but that he would remember love at the edge of oblivion, and in that memory, choose light. The Force is not a weapon. It is not a code. It is breath. It is bond. It is choice. It chose a slave. It chose a Jedi. It chose a father. And it chose a son. Now it chooses you. Sleep now, Seeker. The holocron dims. The voice fades, but the story never ends. You are the echo now. You are the silence after the storm. You are the whisper in the Force. And the Force is with you. Always the end.